All right, you guys, let's call this meeting to order. We have the Simsbury Board of Education regular meeting of November 8th, 2016. Thank you all for coming. We don't usually have meetings on Election Day, but it was important. We have important business to get done, so we're happy to have you all here, and thank you for all for coming. We have a lot of things to get home for as well, so we'll try to get through this quickly. I'd like to thank you for coming, and you're Andrew Paracat. Well, thank you very much.
Welcome.
You're Troop 175. What grade are you in? Nice. So what are you going to earn from being here? Wonderful.
Very good.
And if you have any questions, we have public audience at the beginning and at the end. So if you have a question, I will give you a chance to ask. We have no recognition today?
We have one.
Okay.
Yeah, one recognition. So we're excited about this. Every year, as you know, communications is one of our goals with the Board of Ed. We submit different samples of our communications to CABE for consideration for an award. We had a big winner this year, and it was an award of excellence for education communications in the area of special projects. So I have Beth Hennessy here, Martha Hogan is with us, and Andrea Pernitis is with us. And what they did over the last 2 years is really reframe their character education program. And in doing that, they created visual representations around some common language and common themes. So I was going to have Beth just talk about it a little bit, briefly, and I think you have samples in your folders.
I brought a sample.
And we have the big, beautiful ones. There you go.
There's even bigger ones at Central School. But I really want to point out Andrea's leadership on the Character Ed Committee. She's got a long history at Central School as a parent and as a teacher, and she really kept us true to the history of Central School with some of our themes. You're going to hear in the elementary report that one of the highlights was our work on the Central Sales Committee last year. The real meat behind this is the school-wide expectations that were developed by children, by the students, and they're setting the tone using our 6th grade captains to really drive the work and the expectations at the building. We have a beautiful new mural at the school that has the banners of the themes of character that we celebrate each month. And you're welcome to come see that mural as well. And then Martha Hogan comes on the scene, and she's got these great ideas how we message this and get this in our school community. So we're really proud of the work the committee has done, and we just can't thank Martha enough for her creativity and talent to put this wonderful poster together. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you.
Now we have public audience. Any questions? Any thoughts?
Sounds good.
All right.
Wonderful. And Board and Communications, Emily Sullivan is here today, sitting in for Zeke. She will be taking over in January, so she's getting a little test run.
All right.
So Zeke couldn't be here today because he's working the polls, but he gave me a lot of good information to share with you all. At the high school on November 2nd, we had our Tri-M Music Honor Society and International Thespian Honor Society had their inductions. They inducted lots of new, mostly sophomore and junior students. On Thursday, November 3rd, another music department event, the men's a cappella groups and choirs had a very successful men's night out, which also featured choir groups from UConn. And then for some district-wide things, as you know, there was no school today. There was professional development at all schools. At Henry James and the high school, they were doing work with technology and how they're going to further use that in our classrooms. For November 11th, all schools in one way or another are celebrating Veterans Day. At the high school, that's going to be a tech ed pen-a-thon with these really interesting pens that they make that I would encourage everyone to check out. At the elementary schools, most schools are having assemblies where they're encouraging students to wear red, white, and blue or their scouting uniforms. Another thing we're going to see across the whole district is the turkey trot from November 7th to the 16th to collect canned goods. And some of the elementary schools have incentives. For example, the classroom that collects the most gets extra recess or something like that. So we're really hoping that we can make an impact for the local families that are looking for a little extra help on Thanksgiving. Some events specifically for the high school. On November 14th, we are going to have the National Honor Society Blood Drive. We have a lot of students and faculty already signed up to donate and to work at the blood drive if they're not able to donate. And then a thing that students are very excited about is The next week after that, we have the homecoming dance, the Powder Puff football game, and the regular homecoming football game, which is the Gridiron Classic against Avon, which I think the whole community is excited about, and there's going to be a big bonfire before, so that should be very exciting. Then at the elementary schools, Tooten, Terriffill, and Latimer are having their book fairs from the end of November into the beginning of December. And then also during that same window are parent conferences, which will mean half days.
Very complete. Thank you very, very much for all
Gave
your
me a
work.
lot to share. He said it was
Really
an important
appreciate
week.
it.
Well done.
Tom?
I'm all set, thank you.
Jeff?
I just want to applaud Megan, Steve, and the whole Squadron Line folks for another successful monster dash. I had 2 runners in it, and I haven't seen the official numbers, but I think there was 12,000 participants this year. My math may be a little off, but that's what it seems
That's what it
like.
looks
So,
like.
hats off to you folks.
Todd?
Nothing for me. All set, thanks.
Tom?
All set, thank you.
So,
Just a reminder that on the 15th, the Community for Care will be having their next event, which will be around the prevention of suicide with our own Tom Steen, who is a member of our community and is actively involved with these efforts on the state level. And then on the 16th at 7 p.m. at the high school, we'll have our first SEPTO meeting, or Special Ed Parent Teacher Organization meeting of the year, and that will be held in the Simsbury High School Library Media Center. A flyer will be sent out with any additional specifics for parents.
What was the date?
on the 15th, where is that meeting?
The 15th is going to be at the Simsbury Public Library. The business meeting starts at 5:30 with the program beginning at 6:30.
That's the Community for Care.
Yes, it is.
And what's the time again? I'm sorry.
Our business meeting is at 5:30 with the presentation beginning at 6:30.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Neil?
Yeah, just a reminder that the Communications Subcommittee is going to meet on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. We have 3 agenda items looking at the Henry James potential capital project and getting word out about that, an update on the website, and then a little bit of a review of the survey results that you've been seeing in the school presentations. So 8 o'clock in my office, we'll see the members then.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank Zeke and Emily because most of their report is the kinds of reports that I would give to you, so thank you for doing that. But very successful technology conference today, and our elementary schools for the responsive classroom, so very important professional development that took place today. On another note, in regard to Veterans Day, there are a lot of activities and celebrations that will be happening on Friday across the district. We're extremely proud of the work that we're doing on Veterans Day. Many years ago, maybe 6 years ago, we voted to have school in session on that day. You might have heard recently that the state does have new legislation that we can apply to be a school or a district of distinction in regard to the work that we're doing. I've researched that, and it's not going to be available until next year, but all of the work that we do to honor the veterans and Veterans Day, I think, is pretty special in Simsbury, so we're looking forward to that on Friday.
Thank you. Burke? You're familiar. Matt?
Just one quick reminder, we have the 3 board meeting next Tuesday, November 15th at 5:45. So that really is kind of the unofficial, I guess, kickoff to budget conversations, a meeting where at times we'll get a little bit of guidance to look at different factors that are impacting the town, and we'll have some good dialogue and conversation very early in the budget season.
Great. I think that's it. I was great. I went to Tooten today, and I was at Henry James today. I don't know where else I went, but it was great to see the kids doing bake sales and the community really being alive. It was a fun day. I was at Central last week, but you weren't here. Just Harold. But we're very lucky. We've got a very vibrant world out there, and I'm excited to know about it and be a part of it. Okay, so let's move on to the first minutes of October 20th meeting. Has anyone have any questions or comments? I'd entertain a motion.
Move to accept.
Thanks, Tom. Second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we have the meeting of October 25th, 7 p.m. Anyone have any comments or questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Move to accept.
Thanks, Tom.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. And moving on to, all those in favor?
Aye.
I have somewhere to go. I'm really sorry. I'll reel it in. All right. Neil?
Yep, 2 items tonight, one that requires the board's action. Our teacher at Latimer Lane School, Corey Haven, who had been a grade 4 teacher, actually this year is grade 3. Want to congratulate Corey on the birth of her son, and now she is requesting a guaranteed leave of absence for the remainder of this year from effective November 18th through June 30th. So that is the motion that we need, that the Board of Education approve the request for non-salary guaranteed leave of absence for Corey Haven, effective November 18th, 2016 through June 30th, 2017.
I'll move that.
Thanks, Todd.
I'll second.
Jeff, thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And the other item is informational appointment. George Williams is the teacher that we hired as the long-term substitute to bring in for Corey, and he's doing a great job, and we're lucky to keep him for the rest of the year. So this is an appointment for him. It is only for the remainder of this year, because obviously Corey is coming back. He knows that. So later in the year, you're likely to see him be non-renewed. It's not for performance purposes. It's just he knows the deal as he got into it. So, and we welcome George, and he's done a great job integrating into the Latimer Lane community.
Great, wonderful. I think we go to Mr. Curtis, or Mr.
Mike is going to
Goldman.
talk a little bit about the contract. Yep.
I'll talk about the next item, and I'll ask Burke and Neil and any of the committee members who were part of it, the subcommittee members, to chime in. But this is with regard to the collective bargaining agreement with our School Administrators Association. As you know, the process, I think you know, starts early on in the year, this time in August. We are operating in a system that's very heavily regulated by state mandate. It involves a lot of meetings over a lot of weeks with a lot of participants. And the team on the administrator's side this year was Scott Baker, Steve Petrina, Brian White, and Ken Para. On the board subcommittee, other than me, it was Tom Doran, Todd Burrick, Jeff Tyndall. And of course, we're assisted all the way through the process. Actually, the guys that kind of hold our hands through the process are Neil and Burke, and both of them are looking much more rested than they were a week or so ago. We're also assisted by very experienced legal counsel, somebody who's spent a lot of time negotiating these kinds of contracts with similar groups around the state. So it's a big effort. You have in front of you some information. It's not, of course, just about compensation and benefits. It includes other things, but we're not going to try to read you the entire contract tonight. We'll just kind of talk about the major issues. One thing that was a little different this year is that we have some language in our administrator's contract that requires us to do a little bit of checking against competitive districts to see that our salaries are maintaining within a range of what competitive districts are paying. And Neil and Scott Baker spent quite a bit of time, again assisted by Burke and other people, kind of going through and doing that comparison. And the result of the comparison was that we needed to sort of begin the process by making some adjustments to bring a few of the people within that bargaining group into line in accordance with the contract language with competitive districts. So we dealt with that. We got that out of the way. The balance of the work really was around compensation, general wage increase, which is really the issue for us, and benefits. And I think everybody has a copy of the resolution, is that right? So the general wage increase, which will take effect in July of next year, the first one of the 3-year contract. The first year, 17-18, will be 2.4%. Same for 18-19, 2.4%. And then for the last year of the contract, 19-20, 2.3%. On health insurance, you may recall that we've been moving everybody away from the non-high deductible plans, moving everybody on to high deductible plans where we can. The non-high deductible plans now are all buy-ups. They pay the differential in price between the HDHP and the non-high deductible plans. And under the HDHP, the high deductible health plan, we were able to agree on some increases in the benefits, basically a 1% incremental increase each year through the life of the contract, both on the healthcare side of things and on the dental insurance side of things, moved both of them up. We also had some other changes, one of which involved some life insurance, so we essentially were able to negotiate a sunset provision to some life insurance language that was in the contract. So all in all, we think a fair settlement. You know, this is crunchy stuff. You're talking about people's compensation and benefits, but I will tell you that once again, the negotiations were marked by a respect on both sides of the table, a belief that being transparent and communicative through the whole process was very good for everybody, and Neil and Burke really led the way on that communication side of things. And the result was we ended up, as I said, with a fair settlement, which we've presented to you tonight. This is now my 5th session, contract negotiation sessions. Of all the contract negotiation sessions I've done, this is by far the one that I think was run in the most professional and organized, and as I said, transparent and communicative manner. So my hat goes off to Neil and Burke for all the work they did on it, and the folks, Scott and Steve and Brian and Ken on the other side, and my fellow committee members. So thanks to everybody involved. We have the good fortune to have a great leadership team across the district, and we got through the negotiation process in a good way, and it's only because we all embrace the idea that this is a great district and we want to protect it. So good job to the committee members, and happy to answer any questions. If any of the committee members would like to add anything, Burke or Neil, Tom, anyone, any other comments you'd like to make?
No, I will just note that this was an interesting experience for me. As the committee members know, I used to negotiate on the other side when I was a member of this association. So it was interesting to be on the other side of the table. It was very refreshing to note that the new team with Scott and the other administrators who were part of it did a very nice job in, as Mike characterized it, a very respectful negotiation. And I appreciate the leadership that Scott offered as I handed the reins off and stepped to the other side of the table.
I must say that I like you better when you're on my side of the table.
Anyone else have any questions or thoughts? Tom?
Could you give us some perspective on how this settlement, these percentage numbers in particular in paragraph 2 of the memorandum, how they compare with other settlements, let's say in the Farmington Valley or in our DIRG, or
yeah, that's a good question.
We normally compare ourselves with.
You know, it's negotiation season right now. Well, it's actually over now. If you're not negotiating now, you're going into arbitration at this point. But we get updates from our legal counsel on a weekly basis of the settlements that are made across the state. Of course, this isn't the only year that contracts get negotiated. They get negotiated every year. So some of it's last year's contracts that are negotiated. But, you know, we really look at our peer districts. And, for example, Farmington, remind you, we came in at 2.4. Farmington came in at 2.65. Avon came in at 2.25, just a little under us. Glastonbury came in at 3.0. So those are the districts that we pay the closest attention to, and we're on the lower side of the average, I guess you'd say. Glastonbury kind of skews the numbers up a little bit higher, but
Is the same true of this step increment movement as well?
right. Well, we don't get necessarily good detail on the step increment. Everybody really focuses on GWI.
Gotcha. Thank you very
Better
much.
wage increase.
Thank you.
So, Burke, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think you covered it well, and I just really wanted to thank the subcommittee members and definitely you, Mike, for all of the challenges with your schedule. I don't think you missed a single meeting, and you had a lot of other challenges going on.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
So, if there are no other questions, I'll read the resolution. Okay?
Great,
No, sir?
please do.
Pardon me. Move that the Board of Education ratify the proposed changes in the collective bargaining agreement between the Simsbury Board of Education and the Simsbury School Administrators and Supervisors Association for the period July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2020. 2020, yeah. Just trying to see if I was through June 30th,
Just trying
2020.
to keep you on your toes.
Trying to trip me up again. Okay.
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all so much for all your work. Any opposed? Thank you to everyone involved. And now we are coming to the 2017 Board of Education meeting schedule. This isn't, we don't have to vote on this. We have to cancel the meeting, but we don't have to vote on it. Oh, yeah, we do. So can you all look at this, and if anyone sees, it's pretty straightforward. I would request a motion.
Move to accept.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving right ahead, let's change that. We're looking at, our November 22nd meeting is the week of Thanksgiving, and as we typically do, we cancel that meeting because a lot of people are traveling or busy, and our staff is busy, and any of our people who want to present are busy. So if you guys would agree to that, I would accept a motion.
Move to cancel Board of Ed meeting scheduled on November 22nd.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
This is Burke.
We're going on to Burke. Thank you very much.
So you've got a brief exhibit that gives a little bit of the history. The board was busy over the summer and back in August while reviewing concepts for Henry James, both phases 2 and 3. Last amended the educational specs for this phase 2 project, the one that we're trying to carry out next summer, and that was to include some conversion of the locker room areas. We have more locker room areas than we need at Henry James, to try to create some instructional space, and by doing so try to help when we go to a phase 3 to have more so-called swing space where when you're working on one area, you need more areas to house students. So that was the most recent change. In October, I went along with the architects to the state to what's called a prep meeting, and this is in regard to the grant process, the partial reimbursement grant process. You may have heard a bit about some changes that are coming next July 1st that are proposed to the state grant program, and in meeting with the folks at the state, we were very pleased to hear that it looks like we're likely to be grandfathered from certain changes because this process has been in phases, and they understand that we've been working at this for several years. And so what I have before you, based on the input with the state, was some language to help make sure that we maximize the potential reimbursement of this project. Some very small clarifying terms which I've put in bold, so the changes are really just things that I've put in bold in this educational spec document. And there's really only one added area, and that was to look at the nurse's office for ADA improvements, which was something we were going to do in phase 3. We now think we might be able to do that in phase 2. So just to put it in a visual sense, along with what you have in words, which is how the educational specs are supposed to be done. We have an updated quick floor plan. I'll just try to highlight it. I know it's a bit small, but you have the gymnasium. We have, it's the older gym, not the new gym, where there'd be HVAC, and we've highlighted in the educational specs that we're not just replacing what's there, we're doing improvements for dehumidification as well as air conditioning. That is the portion that's reimbursable. They don't reimburse you for something that's just replacing what you had. So there is some partial reimbursement there. This next area in blue here, that is the proposed area where we're looking to reclaim locker rooms into classroom program space, and this area in purple here is looking at the current nurse location and trying to expand that to make it fully accessible. The next colored area here, we have a public ADA accessible restroom. That's not something that we currently have. In the, it's very hard to see this little orange area here. That would be the replacement of the elevator. And really, the first floor we did in phase 1. There's a small area here in blue. Those are some of the display cases that would be installed, which was something that was planned for. We didn't have enough funding in the first phase. And then you see the stairwells highlighted here that would be renovated. And as you go up to the second floor, now the scope of it, similar to phase 1, is the flooring, abatement of the flooring, the lockers, the ceilings, the lights, and the fire suppression for the hallway. Not for the rooms yet, but running that line while we're doing that work. So that's very similar to that first phase. So that's a quick overview of phase 2. We're trying to get that to a design level where we can get it out to bid, have you see the plans and specs, and get those formally signed off along with the public building committee, which will be really running this project. So I wanted to make sure that you were clear on what we were recommending for these small changes to the educational specifications. We have asked them if it's possible to take the scope of work that we've added here from some of this locker room area, and to take the HVAC work, knowing that we have some capital money for the climate control project, and put those together to really maximize what we can get done and what we can get reimbursed. So we're waiting to hear about the answer, whether we can combine that to have reimbursement for all of that work.
Thank you so much.
So if there's any other questions, I'm happy to try to.
So the reason why these changes are is because you had these further conversations. It's those detailed conversations that kind of made.
Yes, because we know that with the guidance and the State Department of Administrative Services has really taken a great stance, which is they want you to come in and talk to them so they can give you more guidance, and they are very helpful in terms of saying it really is important to add the words. Some of the words that you see here, that makes it reimbursable to a larger extent. So they seem like subtle changes, but it's important for us to maximize potential reimbursement.
Sounds great.
So we'd ask for your approval of the motion as recommended in the exhibit.
Okay, I'll move to approve the revised educational specifications for the proposed Henry James Memorial School project, State Project 128-0108A/CV.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks so much for all the work. Now, I think all the people in the room can talk to us.
Okay. I'd like to invite Scott Baker and Maggie Seidel to the table. You'll have to flip through there for a minute there. Tonight is our opportunity to share with you our elementary story regarding our academics and cultural and climate work that's been going on at the elementary schools. Every year, 2 principals step up to be the presenters, but as you can see around the room that we have all of our elementary principals, as well as Betsy Gonzalez, our Director of Elementary Curriculum. Everyone has had a little bit of a piece of pulling this together. So it's a group effort, and we pride ourselves on that work that we do collectively as an elementary group. So thank you to Scott and Maggie for being here tonight. So as we look through the agenda tonight, we'll be talking with you about some of our academic indicators of success, and they'll be giving you information regarding that. As I mentioned the culture and climate work that's been going on for a number of years at each of our schools, and nicely our central school was recognized for their communication regarding that work. Scott and Maggie will talk with you about areas of focus that are going on this current school year, and they will also give you a budget preview of what they're thinking about as an elementary group. So I'll toss it over to Maggie and Scott.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So we wanted to start this evening by sharing with you our indicators for success. Each school year, we start the year by reviewing our district achievement markers and setting goals for the year ahead at each grade level. These district markers are really important, and they help us to measure success. They help us to measure students in need of intervention. They also help us take a look at student growth over time, and they also help to take a look at our curriculum and determine whether it's really preparing students for end-of-the-year benchmarks. So we know you've heard from the high school and the middle school, and our part is really to talk to you about setting the foundation for the social, emotional, and academic success of our students. So within our district strategic plan, we have 2 focus areas. And the first focus area is around reading level performance at the end of grade 3. Reading is really a key for future learning. We know that, and there's a real shift from the K2 level where students are learning to read, and then the shift really turns to reading to learn. And that's a significant change for kids, and that's one of our first areas to focus. Our second area is the grade level performance in reading, writing, and math by the end of grade 6. The integration of these 3 content areas is a gateway for success for our students from middle school all the way to the secondary level. We really look at student performance in each of these content areas through the upper elementary grades, and this culminates at the end of their elementary school experience in grade 6. So, to take a look at our district data, so these are the scores from the spring of 2016, and as you can see, 89% of our grade 3 students were at or above the end of year benchmark in the DRA2. And also we had 79% of our grade 3 students who were at or above the end of year goal for the DRP. These are 2 different reading assessments that really probe the disparate aspects that are included in reading. And together they give us a really great snapshot of overall reading performance. So just to give you a little bit of the difference, the DRA2 looks at different aspects of reading, and those aspects include fluency, rate of reading, comprehension, and accuracy. Where the DRP is a different measure. It's an independent measure that shows their stamina for the assessment, and it really drills into that comprehension work. So you can see that for our grade 3. And then in grade 6, we had 85% of students who scored at or above for the DRP. These scores at grade 6 have remained fairly consistent with slight variations over the years. And the DRP scores are really aligned as we take a look at how they compare to our SBAC scores in ELA as well. So Erin's going to take a moment to talk a little bit about taking off the Smarter Balanced.
So this is the second year of our Smarter Balanced assessment, and what we've put together for you tonight as we look at our grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 is to give you a general overview of the performance that has occurred for the second administration of that test, and likewise our CMT Science in grade 5 is one that we have in place. It will remain in place for 2 more years before a new science assessment comes, but we're pretty proud of the performance that we have this year at our elementary school in grade 5 for science.
So I'll continue. I'm a member of the Language Arts Vertical Team, and the charge of that group is really to take a look at English Language Arts from K to 12. And as we continue to look at our performance on this new Smarter Balanced assessment, after the second year of this, you can see that we've made some improvements in our performance at grades 3, 5, and 6. And you know, it's new. It takes time for us to take a look at this. And just a note, the state removed the writing performance test in the 2016 administration of the test, and therefore the state then pulled that back out in order to take a look at the compared between the 2015 and 2016. Just a note, we performed really well on that writing performance test, so that was a little bit of a, but overall, that strong performance is noted in the area of ELA for grades 3 through 6. And just as
it's important that they're learning it.
It is. And just a point of reference is that the state performance for ELA was really, for grades 3 through 6 ranged from 52% at or above to 58%. So we're proud of that work. Kick it over to Scott.
Okay, so good evening. I'm taking the math portion of the SBAC for several reasons. I'm a member of the math vertical team that looks at math instruction all the way up. I'm also the administrative member on our math pilot study, which I'll talk about a little bit more when we get a little further into the presentation, and also a former middle school math teacher. So I have a particular interest in the subject. And as you look at our math scores, those scores mirror the growth patterns of ELA from last year, but are not at the same levels as ELA, and we'll look at that in a second. But we've seen growth in grades 3, 5, and 6, just like we did in language arts. And in response to some of these scores, one of the things we've put into place this year is an extra math coach, which again I'll talk more about when we get into initiatives that we're working on this year. But we're seeing gains, but we'd like to see more gains, and I'll talk about that in a second. But just as a frame of reference, the state averages are in the mid 40s to low 50s on the different grade levels for math. So.
Are those the same cohorts that go kind of diagonal? So
the diagonals would be the cohorts. So you can see that we have growth from grades 5 to 6, and then relatively flat 4 to 5, and a little dip 3 to 4. And if you make those diagonals in language arts, you'll see. I mean, if you wanted to peek at that real quick, we could go back.
Want to take a look at the
Scott or Maggie, grade 4 is the outlier.
Yep.
In both cases, could you give us a little color on that?
I can't give you a lot of color on it, except that this is the second year of the administration of the test. So those are the things that we're looking into and saying, which pieces of the curriculum may we be missing or not. But I can give you a micro look into when we see data like that, the questions we ask. So some of the questions I asked and this was specific to the 4th grade teachers, was, as we're going around and watching the kids take the test, we're seeing lots of quadrilaterals and identification of shapes and stuff like that. And wow, we're going to teach that unit in another 2 weeks. So, in terms of when you have a new test, lining up when we teach things for when the standards is it takes a few years to figure that out. And that's one observation. That's just a sample of an observation I got from a 4th grade teacher when we're saying, hey, how come we're seeing that? So it could be some alignment issues with where we're teaching things in 4th grade particularly. And so those are in math. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. There also can be cohort issues. When you're looking at just a 3 or 4 point swing in a district our size, that's, if you took it the whole district, it's only 10 kids difference, and it could be a cohort swing as well. So those are, that's like the fine grain of what we get into when we're trying to make decisions. You don't want to make wholesale curriculum or grade level curriculum decisions until you really fully analyze the problem. And we're 2 years.
Those same principles be at work in the case of ELA?
Yeah,
Correct.
Absolutely.
That's why it's also so important that we have our own district measures that we know and that we continue to use with fidelity over time. I think with a relatively new assessment in this area, it's hard to know, just as we went through with the CMT. That's why those district measures, in addition to this summative measure, are really, really important.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Which we saw on the DRP slide, 2 slides up.
And the other questions that you look at with that is that 4th grade number a Simsbury thing, or is that pattern repeated across the state? So you look at those pieces as well. In terms of the state is fine tuning the cut scores of the test as well. All right, we can flip to my favorite one, which is the grade 5 science. So if you look at our grade 5 science results, we are back up in the high 80s. Which is an extremely strong performance when you mash it up against schools in our DIRG. As Aaron mentioned, we have a couple more years with this particular test, but this is a test that our teachers are familiar with. Our curriculum is aligned to, and so this is what we would expect in Simsbury when we have familiarity with the test, the curriculum, and things are going well. I will note, I think the high school had some very nice scores on the science. The middle school had some decent scores on the science. I can't help myself, but Terriffill School's science scores were top.
You guys gave the mic.
Put me in front of the microphone. We were at, Terriffill was at 94.4% on the science test, which was top 3 in the state. So we did quite well this year. I won't talk about last year, though. So I can't help it. I'm proud of my kids.
Number 3 in the whole state?
Yes. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So our kids did quite well. So I'm proud of them. So I can't help but in public saying how proud I am. If we do the next slide, this is there's a lot of information on here. So this slide walks you through where we are in comparison to our towns, and I think it deserves an asterisk because when you look at the second year of giving a test, you're going to get these rankings bopping around, because when you look at how the percentages, we're talking only 3, 4, 5% between a top school and then the average. So there's not a lot of difference between the top schools and the average. I think you'll see these rankings move around a lot. We did with the 4th generation CMT as well for a few years. But let's start with the celebration, which is our ELA literacy scores. When you pool all of our kids together, grades 3 through 6, and you put all the grades together, the percent of kids that are at goal is 81.5, and that's the second highest in our DIRG. Extremely strong result. When you look at math, this is why we have an action plan, and why we're doing some things which I'll talk about in our areas of focus this year, and then budget needs for next year with math. Math's not where we want our scores to be. I think we typically see us in the top 5 in our DIRG, and that's where we landed with science as well. But I would also just mention that when you look at this, we're above the like if you do the math, we're above the average score in our DIRG, even though the ranking pulls you down. So that can be a little bit misleading. So that's where we are with that. We can go to the next slide. Something else we've begun to really dig into when you look at our data really fine-grained is the achievement gap. And I know that this is, we live in a town where we have very high performance, in a state where we have an extremely wide achievement gap. So we need to look at this, and we need to look at where those pockets of children who are not achieving at the rates of where we would like them to achieve are. And I think that's where we're at right now, is at the definition phase of this, and saying where are we, and then examining our practices. In a few weeks, administrators are getting together at Administrative Council to share some of our practices in terms of how are we trying to address the achievement gap in our schools right now, and then learning more about how to do even better with it. So if you look at the left, English Language Arts, we have all students, so that's at 81.5 that I referenced in the slide before. And then you can see where the subgroups are as you go through the graph. Same thing with math, and where we are with that. And I think this is important information to look at, because when we start to really dig into where we're having underperformance, that needs to inform our decisions about instructional moves, about support and resources and budgeting as we come to this time of the season, and where should we allocate our resources to ensure that all students can learn at high levels. And so that's the information this is driving us. The next slide also has science, which is just a very similar chart. And I think what you see with science is that all of the scores are quite a bit higher than the math and language arts, and that's because our teachers are familiar with the curriculum, they're familiar with the test. And I think the gap's not quite as wide among the racial disparities with science, which might tell us a little something as well, because the science test really is that integration of math. There's a lot of reading on that science test, and then content that they're having to hold on to for a couple years. So I think that there's a brighter spot on the science data for us with this. I'm going to kick it back over to Maggie. And that's what we should probably pause if anyone has any questions about the data, the rankings right now, while it's fresh in our minds.
I just have one about just the whole math testing in terms of the assessment itself. I mean, typically does it take like 5 years for that to settle out in terms of the state refining it and us reacting and responding to it effectively? I mean,
It is hard to know. The CMT was in place for a long time. They came out with a new generation of the CMT. It took a few years to, respond to that. This is a different kind of assessment. With the CMT, we had some much more detailed information about student performance. This is a much more global view of the work that we're doing. So it's not diving deep into.
Yeah, the only actionable information teachers are getting is when they're administering the test and they're seeing the kids take it.
They're looking at it.
When they're monitoring the test. But we would hope that this test is based on the Common Core standards, on the Connecticut Core standards. And so as our teachers get more familiar with the core standards and where students have common misconceptions with the standards, we would, and we have a math program, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that is more aligned to the standards and more purposefully aligned, that we should see results improve. I mean, that's where we are drawing our hypothesis in terms of moving student achievement.
Is that how the goals are set, using Common Core standards? I mean, maybe the goals aren't right.
Right.
Well, those are what we have. I mean, that's the
Right.
framework the state gives us to teach too. So, you know. Yep.
All right. So as you heard in the beginning, the social, emotional, and academic performance of our students is really of utmost importance. So we wanted to take a moment to update you about our school culture and climate. Each of our schools at the elementary level have their own character education programs that are focusing on that social and emotional security, and also the development of a positive school community. Although they're unique to each building, there are characteristics, though, that are unifying among all 5 of the schools. So all 5 of our schools participate in some form of school-wide celebrations. We have student leadership opportunities among all 5 schools. We also have a great parent body and parent engagement. And also we have our own climate committees that include parents that really help us to dig into the social emotional data that we collect and help us to develop our character programs in each of the buildings. So what we did is we asked each of the principals from the buildings to talk about some of the highlights of their schools in this area. So at Squadron Line, the highlights from this past school year were that 100% of students earned at least one SUN, which is their positive reinforcement. There was also an increase in student-led service projects that occurred outside of school. And the success of the program at Squadron is really based around the implementation of the character education lessons and the infusion of the values of the program in everyday instruction. At Terrifil School, the implementation of the Second Step program in grades K through 2 has also had a positive impact in the area of explicit teaching of school readiness behaviors. In addition, Terrifil is currently engaged in a project to better organize citizenship projects, and that's by grade, and they're really working to also develop guidelines around charitable giving. Last year, Terrifil had the fewest better choice slips, which is that how do we deal with consequences or behaviors that are misbehaviors. So they had the fewest number of better choice slips in a year since they've been keeping the data. So that's another way to take a look at it. At Latimer Lane, it's the first year of the implementation of the Latimer Lane Way, and over 85% of students received individual recognition for acts of kindness, respect, and responsibility, and fewer students required behavioral interventions. In the coming year, the student leadership team at Latimer will take over some of the direct character education instruction for the incoming kindergartners and any new students that are new to Latimer Lane School. At Tooten Hills, the character education team has been working to develop common rules in all of the common areas in the building. So we've worked around the hallways, the cafeteria, at recess, and also on the bus. In addition, we are working to revise aspects of our program with the input of students, staff, and parents. Recently, starting last year and continuing through this year, we were integrating the stances necessary for developing a growth mindset among our school community. And the character traits around this growth mindset, they're really being implemented into the whole school community. At Central School, the character education program was revised and rebranded, as Beth talked about. And this has been with the support of students, teachers, and parents. And their new logo is being used along with the mural at the school that celebrates the spirit of their program. The program is now called Central Sales. And they have sixth grade captains who have taken on some leadership roles and are working to teach students how to sail at recess, on the bus, in the cafeteria, and in the restrooms and hallways. So those are some of the focus areas that we've had in this area this year.
Okay, so I'm going to bring things home with our areas of focus in the budget preview. Areas of, if this were like a newspaper article, the headline above the fold right now would be the elementary pilot has kicked off at the elementary level. So as I said, you know, when we look at the data tells us that math is an area where we need to focus, and so we're focusing on it. So we've begun the elementary math pilot. Betsy Gonzalez is really leading the charge there, along with myself and Erin Murray and our team of math instructional coaches. So we have a really strong team to kick the work off. Some of our first activities have been to survey the entire community of elementary school parents. We surveyed all of the elementary school teachers, and we took that data, and that's really informing our movement forward into the pilot to say what are we looking for in a program, and how is that going to define what what programs move forward. So the pilots are going to be moving forward with many teachers. I want to say 40-plus teachers have stepped up and agreed to pilot individual units of different programs to get a real live look at how these work with our students and with our teachers and our parents, and we'll be looking for feedback from all three constituencies along the way. So I think we've got a really solid plan, and our teachers are very excited about digging into this work, as are our parent representatives and district leadership. To just skip down and talk about the math coaching support, this year we added one math coach to our team of math support, and we're already feeling it already. We've been able to split their jobs, instead of supporting multiple grades, but target them to kindergarten through 2, 3, 5, and 6th grade for math coaching support. And one of the great things they've been engaged in recently is what's called student-centered coaching, where they will take a small group of students and work with the students alongside that teacher. So it's not just they come in and do demonstration lessons and stuff, but they're interacting with kids, they're working with students hands-on, and then releasing responsibility to the classroom teacher. So it's really exciting work going on at that level. In language arts right now, when we're not pushing new math work, we're integrating some new units in Readers and Writers Workshop. It's our strength as a district in the elementary level, but we need to keep up with it. So we have some new units that we are rolling out in language arts as we speak. And then finally, today we had a fantastic session at all the schools with responsive classroom trainers, and really looking to responsive classroom, not to go too much into the weeds of what it is, but it's going to be a common connected thread through all of our individualized character education programs. Teachers are very positive. They really energized and left with things they can do tomorrow in the classroom. So,
Scott, could you just briefly tell us, what does it mean?
What is responsive classroom? Responsive classroom means it's a way of interacting with students, so it's looking at being very deliberate with your language. When you are talking about it, it's talking about rewards and consequence. It's talking about doing modeling for students. We say in kindergarten, all right, line up. They don't know how to line up. So it's about teaching them. And then the third grade teachers think that they taught lining up in kindergarten and first and second grade, but the third graders can't line up either. So it's teaching them how to do things, being really explicit, not making assumptions, and really meeting kids where they are.
Thank you.
All right. Next slide is our budget preview. So some things that you will see in our budgets, the elementary principals are still discussing. This is a collaborative process amongst all 5 of us. But some things we've been talking about is, obviously we're going to have a one-time expense that comes with our math program. If we have a new resources and all that kind of stuff, that's going to come. Another thing that I think we must do when we implement a new math program is support it with professional development, so that teachers know what they're doing and know what they're teaching. And then there may be a need for an additional math coach to be able to get to all of the buildings to support a new method, some new methodologies or some new resources and new units. And then finally, looking at our achievement gap data, one of the things we've been talking about is meeting the social needs of both kids and families is something where we've seen the tremendous impact of the additional social worker this year. And we just say to all of ourselves, boy, the impact could even be greater. And one of the things in terms of that piece is folding in some additional support for the choice program with an additional social worker. So those are the things we're talking about right now, and then we'll engage in the process of submitting the budget to Matt and moving that step forward. So to conclude, in prior presentations, I've done this presentation before. You've heard terrible science scores before, but I remember talking about strong academic performance. Even in this slideshow, we talk about strong academic performance, and then we talk about strong, character programs and stuff like that. But they're on separate slides and all of that. And just I think that you can't have one without the other. You can't have a really strong academic program without meeting the social and emotional needs of students. And if you don't have a strong academic program, then kids aren't feeling like you're meeting their needs either. So they go hand in hand. You need both. And so as we talk about budgeting, as we talk about prioritizing and long-term Board of Ed goals, I would just say let's keep that in the front of our minds, that we keep coming back to. You can't have one without the other. You need both to have successful schools.
Anyone have any questions?
Is that applause? Is that-
Yeah, are you clapping for yourself?
That's
No.
applause, yes. I think that's an art project we had with the kids.
Anyone have any other questions?
Just one more. Like when you talk about the pilot, elementary math pilot, 46 teachers. That's a big pilot, right? So when would you not call it a pilot? Is it next year that we won't call it a pilot? Seriously,
Yes.
like I'm just trying to understand.
Right.
So I could give a little bit more meat to the bones of what the pilot is. So there's 40-something teachers that have agreed to teach one unit in December of one program and then one unit of another program. So, and we're going across all grades K to 6. And so you want to have enough teachers so that they can dialogue at the building level with how it's going. So we're talking about like a 2-month commitment. So it's not like a full year they're piloting a program. So they're taking a little piece, but we want to have enough teachers so that we got enough of a diverse opinion on the various programs.
Thank you.
The last time we implemented math was very poorly done. And it was very traumatic to those parents, myself being one, and our students who were the guinea pigs for the change. So I am very impressed with the efforts made in the doing it with inclusion and common ways and community-based, and I'm really excited about it, and I really appreciate the work you're doing because it's the way to do it, and you have to have everyone understand what's going on as you make changes like
I
these.
think it's in the spirit of continuous improvement from the last program.
From what we've learned, it's really, I think it's wonderful, and I'm really, really happy.
Nicely said.
Well done, thank you.
Thank you, team, for coming out.
Thank you all
Appreciate that.
for coming.
Thank you very much. All right.
Yes. Okay, by all means. All right. So the next, what we have on the capital improvement plan. So I think Burke's got a few things to say. A couple things to say.
Yes. Just a quick overview, setting the stage as the memo mentions in the last paragraph, is that we know that the focus is to get our capital improvement program conversations of our 6-year CIP done earlier for both Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen. That's the request of the Board of Finance. And at the pre-board meeting on the 15th, we know there'll be conversation about the 7% debt guideline and some of the larger projects, obviously Henry James being the largest. So what we wanted to just provide was both the roll forward draft where we changed nothing, just projects, from the first year that was approved, the 16-17 year roll off, and then you saw that in the 17-18 year, which is the year that voters vote on, we just had 3 projects: Henry James, the second turf field, and the tennis court replacement. In the preliminary draft, the document that we're showing you tonight, it just moves out the turf field, as Jeff Pinney discussed at your last meeting, moving that out to year 2, to the 18-19 years. So that really focuses on just the tennis court and Henry James. The only other new dollars that we've shown here is on our district network infrastructure, that first line, kind of keeping that every other year rhythm that we've had for a number of years. So obviously it's a very front-loaded document, and Brian White from Henry James and myself are really focusing a lot, working with the architects on this third phase, close to $23 million, and we have been meeting, have a series of meetings tomorrow with program leaders in program areas for those new spaces, and we're working hard to get that fleshed out a little bit more so we can bring that back and have further conversation, because we obviously have to communicate those needs well. So those are really the highlights of this first preliminary draft, and I'm able to answer any questions if you.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? Keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Our next is the budget calendar, our next item. So everyone put all these
Yeah.
things on your calendars.
Yeah, essentially just a rollover of the same format we had from last year with the new dates. Some of them can be subject to change as we go through, but those are the main presentations that we'll provide
Should we show
to you.
this to the camera? A lot going on.
A lot going on. And then the town dates as they're scheduled so far.
Is this is on our website too, is it?
It will be.
It will be after
So that
tonight's
people
meeting.
want to be
Yes.
It's your regular board meeting dates, other than that additional one, you'll see February 7th is not.
Which is a workshop.
Great, thank you. The input. All right, thank you very much. Do you have anything to say now, Andrew? Would you like to share anything? We're in public audience one more time. Well, I think that's very normal. So thank you very much. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thanks.